also grants available for pedagogy, whether that is for classroom or lab equipment, whether that's studying or implementing new teaching techniques, approaches, tools. Sometimes there's funding available for starting new courses in a new area or exploring new programs. All of that is another bucket of funding that is out there. The other thing, we have lots of centers around JMU, and so that's a third kind of bucket of funding. It's of course connected with the other two. A center lets you do a little bit more, a little bit different than just kind of a research grant. Lets you do more in shaping the direction of your field. A center can also be interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, so building connections to other fields or areas of research, and also to groups outside the university. Some centers have close community partners. And then connected with that, it can kind of do more to shape public policy if that's something that you're into. We can also find you funding or work on finding funding for what I kind of put in a box of real world applications. Again, overlapping. But if you're thinking about turning your research into some sort of product, okay, there's a lot of things for startup funding, working with industry, working with small businesses. These are not separate boxes. They kind of connect and overlap in interesting ways. But I think what I want to just say to start is when you're thinking about applying for research, take a bigger picture for what you're interested in. And don't just think about the kind of typical research ones. Okay. And there are more things. I could have done a whole thing on why apply for funding, but that would be boring. So, okay. I think probably one of the key things, though, is independence connects all of these. When you have your own pot of money, you have a little bit more freedom to go do what it is that you want to do. Whether that is traveling for some sort of conference, whether that is going to some other location to do your research, whether that is employing students, whatever that looks like. Obviously you're bound by the terms of your grant, but you do have, I think in a lot of cases, a little bit more independence than you do just kind of when you're dependent on asking someone else for money anytime you need to do something that costs money. Okay, so when it comes to actually going about finding research opportunities, I kind of think of it as two categories. Okay, and maybe this is just saying something about how my life went as a faculty member, but I'd start out this semester, I'd be like, you know what, I'm going to make a goal once a week, I'm going to log in and look for funding. And the end of the semester would come, and I'd be grading finals, and you know how many times I've logged in? Once, when I set that goal at the beginning of the semester. So I really kind of recommend being a little bit more passive and signing up for notifications. Almost all federal agencies have an email listserv that will email you opportunities. Emails are great for when you're killing time. So I'm going to go through NSF because I think that's kind of one of the biggest funders that SCIES is interested in. I'll have the slides available. I'll give them to Carolina to share. And Department of Energy, NIH, I've got a whole bunch of extras through there. And then that works well if you know the federal agency that funds your research. But if you're multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, or you know things are just slightly uncertain with the federal funders right now, if you're thinking about private funding, you can also set up SPIN database notifications. And the SPIN database is, has over 40,000 funding opportunities. It's very expansive. That's its strength. It has its weaknesses too, but it's very expansive. And so you can sign up to get notifications based on search terms from SPIN. And so that will catch some of the smaller ones, some of the private funders that may be becoming more important as things change at the federal level. That's great if you're not like, I need money to keep my lab running, you know, next year. Just to kind of see what's coming out there. The other pot is the actually going to search. And again, here you can kind of search by individual federal agency. I'll talk about some tips to get NSF and some other searches a little bit more effective. And then we'll also talk about searching in the SPIN database itself. Okay. Beyond passive, there's kind of browsing. You know, I think this is where sometimes people have no idea where to start. And I will just say we have put together on our website, and the link isn't there, but I will make sure to add the link, grant calendars. So these are opportunities that we've added that we think people might be interested in or stood out to us. And I'll just show you where to get that.
Lauren, I did add that to the email announcing this workshop,
Oh,
so
wonderful.
they should have a link to that.
I'm a guest. If you've never seen our website is here. If you want to request services from us, here's the link there. But we have a funding opportunities page here. This is the SPIN database that we'll go through a little bit more in a few minutes. But down here is a collection of grant calendars, and we've also listed rolling submissions. So most of you guys are probably interested in math and sciences. Okay. So here is the calendar of a bunch of stuff in February. Unfortunately, some of these you have to click to see the full day, other opportunities. But there. So if you just kind of want to scroll through and see what's out there, bunch of different agencies. So you can see that we've got some private ones on here, Dominion Energy. Here's an NSF one, that's mid-career. Here's one from National Forest something. There's some NASA awards there, Google there. So we've got all sorts of things on here, obviously. This is February. If you're just browsing, you probably want to look about 3 months out. So April looks a little bit less crazy right now. You can see here's one offered by the Smithsonian. Here's engineering. Again, we have NSF and so some of the big.
I'm glad to see Virginia Community Sciences. That's targeted toward undergraduates, and JMU being heavily undergraduate, probably.
We do not put opportunities targeted at undergraduates here. So this is small project research grants. Now you can use that to fund work with undergraduates, but if it's something that undergraduates would be applying for, that lives in STARE, which is a different office in Ready. We work primarily with the faculty and employees.
Yeah, I was saying that the Virginia Community Sciences target mainly towards faculty who are teaching undergraduates.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And all of these have a link where you can go to learn more about it. So obviously this is not exhaustive. We don't have every single opportunity there. We are not trying to replace SPIN with its 40,000. But this is kind of how we keep track of things.
And if you guys know of any recurring opportunities that should be on the calendar and not, let me know, and we can get them added.
And then, of course, sometimes you're spinning your wheels. Sometimes you have a great idea, you just don't know what to look for. You can always contact us for a meeting. We're happy to sit down, work with you, see what we can find. And because you're in size, you will almost certainly be meeting with our wonderful Carolina over there. And it's really easy to remember. Our email is researchdevelopment@jmu.edu, or you can use that request services form. Okay. So what I kind of want to do now is sort of go through what does it look like to do each of these. Okay. So we're going to start with NSF because they are kind of the broadest. They, at least right now, do science and social science. And so what I'm going to talk about is first, how do you actually go through setting up email notifications? Because that's maybe not as easy as you might think. And this second thing I'll do is for that kind of active searching, let's some tips and tricks so you don't get bogged down in a whole bunch of crap. Because that happens. Okay. So if you have a computer and you haven't signed up for the NSF email notices, we're going to kind of go through that. So if you search for NSF funding opportunities, you're probably going to get to this page. I'll just say, I actually do not like the NSF's funding search. So I don't use this page a whole lot. If you use RSS, congratulations, welcome, for making it here from the 90s. Feel free to do that instead of email. But the way that I tell people, especially for passive awards, is go ahead and sign up for email. You're getting passive notifications of what the awards are. So that should hopefully bring you up to this page. And right now people, when I tell people about this, they oftentimes say, but I don't want emails for the whole NSF. Because all of NSF is really, really big with a lot of opportunities. Don't worry, this is not, you will have the option to narrow it. Okay. So if you put in your email and hit submit, it's probably going to bring you to a page where you have to put a little bit more information. Okay. I'm already subscribed, so it brings up my subscription page. So I'll give a minute, and hopefully you'll eventually get to a page kind of like this.
Are we making selections or later?
Yeah, so I would say go ahead and make selections. I recommend that people pick at least one from up here. You can see because of my job, I'm subscribed to almost everything. I've skipped polar programs. I don't know if anyone here going to the Arctic or Antarctic. Okay, maybe I will sign up for that for you, Irene. You know, kind of pick ones that are most relevant to you. So there's the computer information science and engineering, STEM education is a popular one around here, engineering, geosciences, SPE, that would be your social sciences, okay? If you have Air National Partners or Air National Work, you might want to think about the Air National Science and Engineering opportunities. But this is where you select so that you don't get everything that NSF is doing. I always recommend selecting both up here and proposal due date reminders. Not every office is good at sending out proposal due date reminders. I wouldn't necessarily count on that. But I kind of recommend putting at least one selection up at the top because that's where you're going to be notified of new opportunities, and then at least one of the proposal due dates.
Do they send out a lot of emails usually?
Okay. You actually have the option to change how often you get those emails.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not seeing that here.
It was in the beginning, when
Okay.
I'm creating the.
Yeah, subscriber preferences. Preferences. Yeah, so you can change, when you go to subscriber preferences, you can set it by how often you want it. I do not have it set to immediately because I'm subscribed to everything and my email would just constantly ding with the NSF telling me stuff. I have mine set to daily, mostly because I'm trying to maintain all of those. I think for most people, especially if you're just kind of want to keep abreast of what's going on, weekly makes sense. You know, might be different if you're in a situation where like you need funding to keep your lab running. But for most faculty, I think weekly makes sense. I do daily. If you're one of these people that really loves to have your phone buzz all the time, you can do immediately. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to muck about with your preferences, and then we can talk about active searching. And the nice thing with preferences is you can go back and update it later. If you decide NSF is bothering you way too much, is everyone ready to go? Everyone good? Okay, so that's great for just kind of seeing what opportunities there are as they come up, but maybe you're sitting there and you're like, well, I've got this really, really great research idea that I want to do, or this great pedagogical approach that I want to roll out in my classes, or whatever. I don't want to just wait for the MSF to ding and tell me that there's something available. I want to actually go find it. So that's kind of the active searching. You can search in here. I'm not going to tell you not to. This searches the funding opportunities. I would say generally, if you know your directorate, that's kind of the things that you just decided. So bio, computer science, engineering, that sort of thing. You probably want to restrict to those. Okay, so you might say, I'm in computer science, so I'm just going to search through computer science. You can, if you select computer science, it'll search everything in computer science. Okay. And that brings up everything that computer science participates in. Both things that are in computer science and things that are housed elsewhere or are multi-directorate. I often tell people you might want to play around with excluding Dear Colleague letters. Dear Colleague letters are letters NSF puts out saying we're especially interested in X, Y, and Z, but it's not itself funding programs. So they will say we're interested in X, Y, and Z and apply here. So sometimes people really like the Dear Colleague letters. Sometimes I usually end up excluding them when I search here. You can also search for education level. So you might not want to see programs that are for graduate students, undergraduates, etc. So, or rather, you might want to only look for those. So if you're a K-12 educator. I don't really find this super useful a lot of times. And I'll show you why. Let's say I do work in astrobiology. And I put that in and I search and no results found. Okay. And so I might just kind of walk away and say, well, I guess the NSF doesn't fund astrobiology. And that's not actually the case though, okay? So rather than using this, what I often end up telling people to use for active searching is this button here that says Explore Funded Awards, okay? In there you're searching not the programs, but you're searching what has NSF funded before, okay? And so if I worked in astrobiology, I take that in here and search. I can see all of these programs that involve astrobiology in the abstract that NSF has funded, okay? So maybe REU's research experiences for undergraduates, some of these other ones. So maybe I look at this and I say, that looks relevant, okay. I can scroll down here, and then the key thing is this NSF program. that will tell you almost certainly the name of the grant, or at least the directorate division that it was sent to, okay? And so I think oftentimes that's a little bit more useful for people to search through the awards and then try and say, well, which program has funded stuff like what I did, versus scrolling through the programs, okay? If you have a distinct research direction, if you're like, I am material science, okay, searching through the programs and finding the material science one might be the thing for you. But this is kind of what I think people end up doing a little bit more often. And it's a trick that you may not have heard about before. Pretty much all of the federal funding agencies have the ability to search through awards. I have the links in the slides. NIH actually has a great system for that. It's called Matchmaker. So if you're doing anything health related, the NIH Matchmaker tool is great. NASA is the one exception where I've yet to find a good award database for NASA. But energy, the rest of them, there's searching through awards. Of course, energy, there's 2 programs basically that you're applying for in the Office of Science, for the most part. Okay. Any questions? Okay. All of that is NSF. As I said, who knows what's going on with federal funding? It could be that next week Trump decides that he's cutting NSF. So I also want to talk about SPIN, okay, which is our database tool that kind of searches a little bit more broadly than just one federal agency. Okay. So the SPIN database, has anyone here used it before? Okay, 1 person, 2 people. Okay. This is what JMU subscribes to. It has its pros and cons, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so if you go back and search JMU Research Development and get to this page, I'll give you guys a minute to do that. It's funding opportunities on the left. This is how we get to SPIN. Okay. SPIN has its own quirks. We have a 7-minute tips and tricks video here. So if you can't figure out how to do anything, or anything that I talk about just goes whoop, right over your head, you can come back to this video here. Okay. If you click this link, that'll take you to the SPIN database. And you should see something like this. And you can just dive in and start searching right now. But I do want to encourage you, if you haven't, to consider signing up for an account. Okay. So when you're on campus, you can search without an account. But if you want to, 1, save your searches, then you need an account. And if you want to set up email notifications where it's going to run the search and then automatically notify you of the results, you know, what the funding opportunities are, you need an account for that. You also need an account to search from off campus, in case you want to do things at home. I have instructions for making an account in the slides. I'm not going to go through that right now. If we have time at the end, we might. The reason being that every single account that's requested on campus comes to me for approval before it becomes active. And I'm talking to you guys right now, which means I'm not multitasking and approving your request for an account. I'm skilled, but I'm not that skilled. So we're going to talk about how to do the searches right now, okay? I'm actually going to go ahead and sign in so I can show you some of these things. When you sign in, SPIN is one of the few things that does not use the single login. So you'll set up separate SPIN credentials over here. Okay. When you log in, you will suddenly see the same first 3 that you did before. You'll have the funny alerts and bookmarks, you won't have administration because you don't have the ability to add people. Okay. So I'd say go ahead and bring up the spin search bar. Okay. And we'll do some searches here. Okay. So it has its quirks. So someone yell out a term related to your research.
Extreme.
Extreme. Okay. If you search for extreme, I bet we're going to get all sorts of interesting things. Okay, so we have extreme compound and cascading hazards. We have research and evaluation on domestic radicalization to violent extremism. Okay. Extreme, very extremely different things. Okay, and so that's kind of how the search initially works. It finds things where it's in the name or in the description, basically. So you can see this one doesn't have extreme in the name. If I bring up the description, the word extreme should be in there somewhere. If you click on it and bring it up, it'll bring up this description. I always tell people, please read this, okay? Please double check everything here, and click on the links. Okay. One of the frustrating things, let's see if I see it in here, is this phrase, temporarily suspended. Okay. That can mean one of two things. That can mean what you think it means. This program's not running, so, scroll past it. But it can also mean it's in between when it's been due and a new due date hasn't yet been announced. Okay. So there are a lot of things that run annually. Okay. A lot of NSF programs run annually. Okay. That you get past one due date and they haven't announced the next one yet. But it's run for like the past 15 years, Templeton was kind of in this boat. And SPIN, it's very exhaustive, but sometimes doesn't get updated very much. Okay. So Templeton ran annually, it's still running annually, but they spent a few years not updating it. So if you looked at it, it said it was temporarily suspended, and they said that the last one was something like 2021. Okay, but if you actually clicked on the link and went to the Templeton page, then you would see they actually already have their 2025 due dates posted. They had them posted as of 2 years ago, So the temporarily suspended can be a bit of a misnomer, okay? So even if it says temporarily suspended, go through and check if it looks like it's a good fit for you. The other thing that I tell people is do not pay attention to this number over here. Sometimes it's the amount of a single award, sometimes it is the amount that has been set aside for it total, okay? So double check with that. Similarly with due dates, it's all over the place. The data in SPIN is not necessarily of the highest accuracy. It is very expansive though. So a few other quirks with SPIN. Okay, let's take extreme. Someone throw out another word connected to research.
STEM.
STEM? Okay, we'll do STEM. I'm going to replace your extreme with weather, if that's okay. Okay, so if I type in STEM and weather, I suddenly get very few results, okay? Only 14. And that's because it is only going to show me things that have STEM in it and things that have weather. Okay, it assumes an and between multiple words. And so this is where people can get frustrated, where they're not seeing the results that they want, so they add more words in, thinking that they're going to broaden it, and in fact they just keep narrowing and narrowing and narrowing it. If you want to broaden it, so let's say that my research is in cosmology, and but maybe I'm not finding stuff for cosmology, so I want to also do space science. Okay. Or let's do astroparticle. Okay. I have to write or there. Okay. And then hit enter or look at funding. Okay. Cosmology and astroparticle are not well-funded fields, so you can see still only 38, but you have to put that or in there explicitly. It doesn't have to be capitalized. And that's just something that can lead to a lot of frustration. Does that make sense? Okay. If you're getting a lot of crap, which happens, there are filters here. I'll show the filters. There's only one that I actually recommend that people use, but you can play around with some of the other ones. When you set up email notifications, okay, so what SPID will do is it'll, when you save a search, it saves your search terms. And when you set up email notifications, it will run it generally weekly and send you all the results from running that search again, okay? So especially when I'm doing that, I limit it to new or recently updated programs, okay? So that you're getting an email of here's what's come out in the last week, and not here's all the stuff that you've seen in our last 14 emails and haven't been interested in. Now, SPIN, annoyingly, your options for emails are weekly or daily, not monthly. So I generally would recommend putting 7 days in here. These category filters, I would say if you're seeing a problem, feel free to play around with them. They sometimes don't act the way that you want them to, okay? So, especially this comes up in the arts, where there's a lot more arts funding in Europe and in Canada than we have here. And so a lot of our colleagues over at CVPA are looking at their results and they're like, that's Belgium, that's France, that's the UK, can't apply, can't apply, can't apply. Okay. And so there you can filter on applicant location. You can be like, I am in Virginia. I am not located in Germany. You can also filter on project location, okay? So maybe you're in Virginia, but you're researching birds in Colombia, okay? And so there you can say, I'm only interested in things that will fund projects in South America. Those can be hit or miss, I'm not gonna lie. Because sometimes the information, one, isn't in there in the right place, and the way that the filters handle it when they haven't restricted it in any way can be a little bit buggy. So I recommend doing those only if you're having some sort of problem, okay? Not just kind of across the board to say, no, I want to limit it to the fact that I'm in Virginia. Because they can be buggy, okay? But that's there to play around with, especially if you're seeing crappy stuff. And annoyingly, to apply your filters, you have to go back to the previous page. Okay. So there are two things that you kind of might want to store when you do a SPIN search. One is the search itself, okay? And when we save the search itself, it's saving basically what it ran there. It's not saving this list of results, okay? And so this, once you have something that's giving you results that you like, okay, whether or not there's a lot of them, whether or not there's a few of them, okay, results that you're like, those are things that I'm kind of interested in. It's not a bunch of crap, okay? Then you can save your search, okay? Again, only if you're logged in. You can give it a name. You won't have the user option because you can only save it for you, okay? But this is, you know, I'll give it a name. And then you can select to receive email updates. HTML. And here you can select daily or weekly. For most of you guys, weekly would make sense. And that's where you would save it. Okay. I'm not going to set updates for this one that I just made up with. But I'll go ahead and save it. And then it would show up here under Save Searches. Okay. When you click this and save your search, it reruns it with the new results in the database. Okay. So if you save a search and you come back in a month, okay, and run it, it will hopefully give you different results. Okay. So that then leads to the question of, well, what if I found a result that I really, really liked? Okay, a program that looked interesting, I don't have time to deal with it now, I have to run and teach, but I want to go back and look at it. What you can do is bookmark the program. So this lets you bookmark and save that particular option, so that even if 40 other ones come out, it's no longer on your first page of results, you can go to your bookmarks and see the programs that you bookmarked as possibilities that you want to apply to. Okay. So those are the two differences. You bookmark specific funding opportunities, you save a search, which is basically just the terms that you put in. So I'm going to give you guys some time to play around with Spin for the remaining 13 minutes or so. If you want to set up an account, it's where you would sign in at where it says sign out now, it says sign in at the top. Since I'm logged in, if you want to make an account, it'll go to me and I'll approve it right now. But feel free to play around to try and get results that you want. Sound good? Okay.